It is that time, my demons, and it isn't even Halloween yet, but we've already got the biggest treat we could ever possibly have. So what I want you to do right now is to share this out, share it everywhere. I don't care if it's Testament, fan groups, you name it. I've done it. It's everywhere. Share this broadcast out now. This is your chance to meet a legend of metal and probably the biggest legendary extreme metal drummer, Gene Hoglan, who I can't, there's so many projects I can't even count. I'm sure half the time you don't know where you are at.
I need a scorecard to follow my own career sometimes, I tell you.
Well, you know, that's what happens when you're in demand and it's just like seamlessly throughout your career, you have managed to step in at the right time, or somebody, you know, you're just getting done with one, somebody calls you up and goes, hey, you know, I need a drummer, you know, to do the record. And it's like, you're right there. So we're not going to run any commercials today, guys. Not necessary, because I want to give Gene all the time we can. So let's just take it back, man. I've seen so many different interviews you've done over the years, all the different drum magazines, obviously, because I was always big on, you know, Modern Drummer, Drum. You even did Drumeo, which I was like, oh my goodness. You know, it was great for them to finally pick somebody I thought was really should be on there for all the metal guys. And it's like, yeah, that was fantastic. But, you know, at what point did you know you wanted to be a drummer?
That would have been by the time I was 11. Like, that's when I had been air drumming for 3 years by then. And it was when I was 11, when I was like, you know, I remember, I've said this a number of times. I remember reading an interview with Peter Criss, and he had said, you know, when I was a teenager, I went to my parents and said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to be a rock and roller and I'm going to play Madison Square Garden. And, you know, that always stuck with me, you know. So I went to my folks and said, yeah, I think I'm going to, you know, become a drummer. And both my folks were extremely cool, especially my dad. However, they were like, well, are you sure about this? You know, like, why don't you get an education? You know, all that kind of stuff. They preach education. And then when I started, you know, around that same time, I was really, really good at baseball. And so by the time my young teenage years were hitting, it was, you know, it's like, hey, you kind of have a choice here, Gene. Do you want to follow your baseball, you know, prowess, I guess, or, you know, you want to be a rock and roller, you know, and that was where the one thing, you know, I had long hair. I pretty much looked like this when I was a kid, you know, like, and rock and roll never told me I had to cut my hair or I can't wear goofy clothes, you know, but baseball always did. You got to cut your hair. You can't wear your sister's clothes to the game. What are you doing? You know, kind of thing. And so that's when I was like, by the time I was 13, I was like, yeah, you know, I want to be a drummer. You know, I got my first kit at 13. I want to be a drummer, and this is what I want to do. And at that time, you know, I was just an enormous metalhead, you know, for all the metal that was out in I was 12 and 13 during arguably the greatest year of heavy metal, 1980. And
Yes.
all these exciting albums from all these bands I dug. You know, I've been so into music and so into rock and roll since I was, 2 years old. I was what is known as like classic rock now, back in like 1976, 77, 78, all the, Queen and Aerosmith and Cheap Trick and Ted Nugent and Kiss and Angel and Black Sabbath and, all those kind of
Especially
bands.
Black Sabbath.
Of course, absolutely. All of those bands, Molly Hatchet, all those bands were my bands, and all of the drumming in all of those bands, Rainbow, Cozy Powell, like huge. Tommy Aldridge with Pat Travers, the Go For What You Know album. I was learning all these records when I was like 12 kind of thing. So by the time I've been air drumming for 3 years, and I'm serious about air drumming. It is a valid, viable way to teach yourself how to play drums. Just because you're not hitting a drum kit doesn't mean that you can't, learn how to play, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what that was my. Let me try to see if I'm not even centered here. Oh, well, whatever. But
it teaches you range of motion.
Absolutely, and teaches, and also like say, Neil Peart from Rush, gigantic influence on my early days, gigantic influence on my air drumming career. That was, my air drum kit made his kit look tiny. My air drum kit was huge, but he was a huge influence, and so like when you listen to some of his drum fills or his beats or anything, that was the one thing I always really dug about Neil Peart is his writing of drums was very, very cohesive. You could understand what he was trying to do. There were a lot of drummers out there when I was really young that I did not know how to follow them. I there we go. Yeah, I'm waving arms around. I didn't know how to follow these guys, follow what they're like Dave Weckl or somebody, and
my goodness,
and a lot of Terry Bozzio stuff with like Frank Zappa and stuff. Like when I was 12, 13, I remember learning 2 songs of Terry Bozzio off the UK live Night After Night album. He stepped in after Bruford with UK. He was my UK drummer. I hadn't really heard UK except with Terry Bozzio on drums. Mm-hmm. There was a song called Alaska, and there was a song called Presto Vivace. And now these songs they have recently been released to the streaming services. You used to have to go to like YouTube and catch them, but I remember learning Presto Vivace. It's only about a 2-minute song. It's not very long, but it's just one big, like crazy drum performance. And
man, he's still insane.
absolutely. And so that, that was when I was like, shoot, I could play this entire song. I could sit behind the kit, play this song. I'm doing it. Okay. It was things like that, little benchmarks. I figured out Neil Peart's licks. I'm now figuring out Terry Bozzio's licks and Tommy Aldridge. I mean, he's got some insane licks as well on that Go For What You Know record. Neil Peart was easier for me to learn than Tommy Aldridge on that live record. So, but all were fantastic influences, and I just absorbed every drummer I could hear. And every drummer in the world influences me. Every drummer I've ever heard ever influences me. And there are some drummers that you're like, this guy needs some work, but he'll be an influence on me too, to show me things not to do, kind of thing.
Sure.
It's true. So I learn from everybody, even drummers that don't impress me or whatever. I'll learn something from them.
So did you kind of like then come from like more or less learning by hearing or?
Absolutely. Oh, big time. I'm a self-taught drummer.
Isn't that amazing?
When I was maybe 12 or so when I got my first kit. I was 13. I remember my sister had a friend who said, yeah, I'll, because I have to take drum lessons. I've got a drum kit. I have to take lessons. And I remember this kid came over. He was probably 15. And on my way to the kit, you had to go through my family kitchen, and there was, one of those big old stoves, just on the
Yeah,
right before the door. And
I miss
just
those.
before I opened up the door, I just did a double stroke on that little glass wall. And the kid stopped me and said, "Whoa, what was that?" I was like, he's like, "What did you do?" I'm like, I don't know. I had no idea it was even called a double stroke. And he's like, I can't do that, man. You don't need me as a teacher. You don't play drums. And here I played drums for a number of years, and I can't even do that. And I was just like, okay, well, there goes my lesson, out the door. So that was really about the only lesson that I ever took. Now I take lessons all the time. Just I can watch somebody, or I can learn from everything. And that's kind of what air drumming was when you're breaking down somebody's parts, like a Neil Peart or something, just
He was always good for that too.
What's that?
All those instructional videos and stuff, that he had done throughout like the early days coming through the 80s. He was just amazing at like showing how he does these licks.
Neil Peart did instructional. I had no idea. I've watched one, and
that just makes it more kick-ass. You never even seen any of those.
No, I didn't even know. I remember I went to DW like about a decade and a half ago. They invited me up, and I had to do some kind of just a function at their office. And I remember they handed me a whole bunch of Neil Peart drumming DVDs. I remember he was doing like the hockey theme from Canada, hockey night in Canada kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, I didn't, he's made DVDs. I had no idea, and now you're telling me he did that stuff in the 80s? Shoot, I had no idea. I never watched any of them. I watched a Dean Castronova one,
He's one of my favorites.
Absolutely. He is an absolute influence on my I could point out entire songs that I steal so much from Dean
and you got to record on his kit at one point, right?
Well, we were considering recording on his kit, but it was such a contentious recording session that I didn't want to make any waves and go, that's Dean Castronovo's kit sitting right there. Can we use that one? Also, it's just in a slightly different configuration than what I was using. However, there was a lone snare stand sitting by the kit, and so I pulled snare stand over and I draped my towel on it. Kind of that was my towel stand. But I was like, oh my god, this Dean Castronovo's snare stand! I draped my towel on. Can't you believe it? So there is no chorus to Symbolic without what's that? Forbidden City by Marty Friedman with Dean Castronova on drums from the Dragon's Kiss record. Somebody go check that thing out, and you'll be like, Hoglan, you're a champion thief. Totally stole it from Dean Castronova. That's one thing I will always. It's a point of pride. I'll tell you where I got this lick from. I steal all the time. So that's true. Drummers are supposed to. We have a limited range of stockpile with which to work. So. There's thievery all over the place.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, we are who our influences are. It's like, people used to tell me all the time, oh, I see you're using some Buddy Rich licks there, because Buddy's like one of my all-time favorites. And some of like the fusion guys like Weckl, Steve Gadd,
right.
That were really kind of breaking down doors in these pop songs, not just the jazz fusion stuff, but, when Gadd was playing with
50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, Paul.
That's
Simon.
right.
I mean, look at that. That is not a pop drum beat.
It's not. It really isn't. But it's in that setting, and people just especially metal community growing up during that time. All that other stuff is just like, no, if it's not heavy, I don't want to hear it. And I'm like, when I got to high school, I started just opening up my mind to
Right.
some of that. And I was just like, oh, I need to learn that stuff.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why, like, for me growing up, I was, metal AF. However, I was even more music AF, like heavy metal, flat out, best style of music ever invented for me, for my taste. However, I could never just limit myself to that. God, I remember I was in Dark Angel, and Fishbone was my favorite band. Like, my favorite bands very frequently are not, are outside the metal realm, because I just grew up on music as well. And that's why I always figured, like, if you take a Steve Gadd influence and bring it to this, or you take a, Fish from Fishbone influence and bring it to this, you're just going to grow your own repertoire and your own style. And, having a Motown, lick in a metal song. I mean, it's like that. It just, you have a stockpile of go-to items as a drummer that if you listen to all forms of music, you're not just going to go, well, I've got a, I've got a Nickel McBrain lick. I got a, Dave Lombardo lick. And then I got a, a Cozy Powell lick over here. If you try to just widen I would tell any drummer, like, listen to everything and bring all things to the table. Steve Gadd with Al Di Meola, I've said it a million times, he was a gigantic influence on the Individual Thought Patterns record. So, there's that Bembe beat that he did in songs like Casino and All Over the Elegant Gypsy record. Oh, just all over the Al Di Meola stuff. I'd never heard that beat before, let alone applied to metal, so I was like, instead of going like the typical Death thing, do that I was like, wow, that's really fun. That's you're expanding your own horizons. You're not just doing the tried and true lick that's been done a million times. Bring something new to the table. And that's what I've always tried to do, because I thieve so much. I hate so much. It's like, if you're going to steal as much as you do, you better leave a lot of stuff in there, like I remember when I got just kind of like, having that Tommy Aldridge influence, when it seemed like the whole metallic world was doing like a lot of strokes on the, kind of the Neil Peart, or like say, like a Mitch Mitchell kind of, like, Keith
He's
Moon.
another one.
Right. All those guys are great drummers, but a lot of drummers were doing the kind of just, let's throw the sticks around quite a bit. And me, I would try to construct things like say the, a huge influence on me was the intro to Where Were You by Journey. And, Steve Smith and Vinny Appice used that same lick in a Dio first album song. It's like all that stuff. But that kind of thing I was so into. And I was like, God, everybody else is doing just, doing like crazy drum fills. And I'm like, let's do some things that involve the upper and the lower, like where you're not just, just, that kind of thing. You're trying to construct some musical fills. But, there you go. That kind of thing. Make it musical, and you could really follow guitar riffs with your.
You can,
with you're doing that kind of. I've always called them fragmented quads. I don't know if there's a title for 4 up, 2 down,
right.
6 up, 4 down. Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but fragmented quads always work for me.
Yeah, and like, drummers like Mitch Mitchell, which for everybody out there in Black Flame Land, if you know a little guy named Jimi Hendrix,
Right.
that was his drummer from Jimi Hendrix and the Experience. And he would do these 30-second note runs.
There you go.
But he would accent and put a feel into almost like a triplet feel. And, but it was just always going all over his kit. He was just a
Indeed.
monster. And
Absolutely.
you can get that effect, but he had the snap. And myself and Human the Hoof Beast, who do Tracks of the Dam, we did a tribute to your best albums yesterday. You'll have to check it out on YouTube. But
let me ask, did you play any Mechanism?
We did talk about it.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, that's just one of those forgotten, complete. But I'm
it's not forgotten. I remember when you were talking about it, you were very passionate about it.
I sure was, man.
Just
couldn't get
totally killer stuff.
I was really excited about that one, but absolutely, you got guys like Mitch.
Snap.
Darn
it
tootin'.
shows.
I agree. You got to have that, and that's one thing. Like today's productions, I'm very fortunate that I do range back to the days when it's like your performance is what's going down on tape. There, that's just all there is to that. You
can't cheat. That was the days of you can't cheat.
No, you have to have your parts together, and you have to play this song all in one take. You're not gonna. It's just not going to sound good. And God, we didn't know click tracks back in those days. I had,
nope.
I'd been putting out albums for over a decade when I used my first click track kind of thing. So,
well, there's a reason they call you the atomic clock.
Oh, that's fun. Well, it was. I was at best a coal-driven egg timer back in the early days. There is just such crazy meter all over Dark Angel records and over Death albums. I mean,
especially the Death stuff, the rhythms that you pulled out, and multiple time signatures on Symbolic is just legacy for me. It was just so monumental to hear Death in that way. I think honestly you influenced that record just as much as Chuck Schuldiner did.
Well, thank you. That is very cool. Actually, I was hacking on my meter. You
felt that shit. You know it. You did.
Absolutely. And that was where, when Chuck had sent me the, I've always referred to it as the adorable riff tape. It was a Ghetto Blaster recording. He didn't have any kind of recording system other than a pair of Ghetto Blasters. It plays one rhythm guitar to that Ghetto Blaster, then presses play, sends it over to this one, plays rhythms. Harmonies and things like that. A second guitar into that one, and then sends that tape out to me. It was. There was no timing on there. There was no metronome to any of it. So it was like, you got to
know your instrument.
Well, indeed, and it was a lot of those riffs. It's like, I don't know how to put a beat to this other than I'm going to kind of follow the beat with my kick drums, which was something I started doing with, I'm going to follow the riff with my kick drums. There's one song, whatever that one's called. And it was something that I started doing with Dark Angel because, I play at the time, I was playing way more guitar than drums throughout my entire Dark Angel career. And I was getting to the point where I was writing these, complex chugging rhythms, that kind of thing, and I was like, well, I've been playing these patterns, these kick drum patterns since like Death is Certain, Life is Not, and things like that. So why not? You're playing this odd pattern. It's not just all the way straight 30-second notes. You got this kind of militaristic little pattern going on with these. why not just take your riffs and start conjoining these things? You can do both. And I've never heard anybody do that before. So, hey, I'm sitting here on the toilet writing patterns on my feet, and
I'm guilty as charged as well, man.
right, we all are, and
You
we
got to
get the
pass the time
paperwork.
somehow, right?
Absolutely, you get that paperwork done, then you go grab the guitar, and then you write the riff underneath, over the top of this pattern that you just wrote. And I was like, wow, that's a really neat thing I don't hear anybody else doing. So yay, Dark Angel has this. That's our little, like our lob into the pot of soup of riffery and things like that. That's one thing we try to do. And that was one thing, like with those fragmented quads, that was something I was like, well, I don't hear anybody trying this Tommy Aldridge approach or this Steve Smith approach in metal. So try that. The Bimbe beat from Steve Gadd, never heard that before. Try throwing that into Death things. And so that's where and especially on Symbolic. I mean, we kind of referred to the drums on Symbolic as lead drums, like lead guitar.
Nice.
Because if you notice, the riffs are pretty, just very, they are killer riffs, but they're not over the top technical. I mean, most guitarists can pick up Death riffs pretty quickly. That's it. They're not over the top technical to where you're like, oh my God, I can't make that out. However, on this adorable riff tape, there are some areas where, even though the riff's not that complicated, it's still like, how do you put a beat to that? How do you put a riff to that? So I'm like, to start one of those songs. What is it? I think that's Individual Thought Patterns. That kind of thing. There were riffs that I don't know how to play a beat to this. So come up with something. If you hear like punches and stops in the middle of any of those songs, it's like, I couldn't come up with something there, so.
But they were so powerful though. And, one of the things I always preach to other, drummers that I know is like, sometimes simplicity is what's necessary. Even if it's just an accent and it adds a new dimension. And every band performance, that you do, you're always like upping the game. So the fact that now the cat's out of the bag, for everybody out there in Black Flame Land and myself, and of course I know because I've studied your career so much. Even though you're stealing these licks, from these other drummers, you wouldn't know it because it was never done in metal. And that's where you pioneered a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
And that had to be exhausting because Leave Scars was the first, real Dark Angel record that I was just like, this is it. This is something super special. I mean, obviously I was with you since, Darkness Descends, but
sure.
that very next record, I was just like, oh, and the Led Zeppelin cover you guys did on there was just so fucking fast. I was like, oh, I like it better than the original.
Oh my word. Well, you might be in the minority with that one, but I appreciate that. That's very cool.
I thought it was great. I mean, the whole album, that was, back when listeners would start with the first tune and go all the way through. There was nothing to flip through. There was no reason to, especially with what you guys were doing. And you were even experimental during that time. I remember a handful of times I would see in like Hit Parader or something like that. Somebody snaps a picture of your drum kit and you had like a broken fan on a cymbal stand or something like that. Like almost like a propeller. Like you were getting all these different sounds. I was just like, this is badass.
It was like, I got to quote my friend Paul Kopczynski from Baltimore. He's like, man, I'll play a car door if I can on stage. But that was such a great quote, and I applied that to many a thing. Like I would find, like found percussion kind of thing. I would, any club we're playing at, a lot of times, like, the the base of a mic stand, like this iPad is sitting on a mic stand right now, like the base, the
Right.
round base. Sometimes you could try playing that sort of thing, or of course the fire bell, kind of thing, the big red thing. I played those. I discovered over in Europe, back in the day, back when smoking was at every club,
Right.
they would have ashtrays everywhere, and a lot of those ashtrays sounded great.
Oh
Might not
yeah.
smell that good, but
No.
we would take a like a cymbal stand, pointy part, to pound it through the ashtray, and then I'd be playing that on stage that night. So I'll play anything that just sounded odd and weird, which led to when we got back from one of the tours. Ron Reinhardt's friend Chip Flowers came to me and said, "Hey, man, the guys are telling me that you were playing all these crazy things over there in Europe, like ashtrays and just pieces of metal that you'd find." He's like, "Have you ever played this?" And he whips out the boat propeller. And
Nice.
no, I never have. Oh, shoot. Let me try to figure out how to mount this thing, because, they got a big giant hole,
Oh
And
yeah.
But we figured out a way to mount it, just packed a towel around the thing and set it on there. And that's kind of how the boat propeller was born, just from a buddy who said, "I hear you've been doing this. Try this." I was like, "I will try anything." And I've mentioned it before with the propeller. Was one cool thing about it is you'd hit it. It had a tritone on it. Each blade it was a 3-prong
Yeah.
tone. Each, gang, gang, gang kind of tone. So every time I'd hit it, it would spin, and you hit it again, come back to do another lick, you hit it, it would spin another time. So I used that all over, like you first hear it on the chorus of Overactive Imagination, that thing there, that little
Mm-hmm.
ride bell sounding thing. That's the propeller. And of course you hear it right at the top of and maybe you even see it. God, I haven't seen that video in forever. What's that? The Philosopher. um
Oh yeah. Oh,
that's the
that's like
opening
one of my
lick.
favorite death songs of all time.
That's a really fun one. Yeah, totally. So yeah, I utilized it there. It's all over the place in on the Individual Thought Patterns record. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Just amazing. Um,
Thank you.
so actually, I haven't even really addressed this yet because I've just been immersed in everything you've had to say. Um, hello to everybody out there in the comment section. You guys are fucking amazing. Thank you for being here. We have one here from Todd. It says, "Welcome, Gene. Please describe the importance and ultimate effect from playing with Chuck and Steve with Death." So, like, that experience, what has that taken away, and followed you through some of the other bands that you've moved on to?
Well, to start with my brother Steve DiGiorgio, a brotherhood was
Mm,
created then. We had each other's backs from the start, because our friendship predated Death. Every time Dark Angel would head up to the Bay Area and play some gigs, we'd always have Sadis come out and play with us. And Steve said we always knew we'd have a gig when Dark Angel would come to town. We always knew we could play in front of some folks there. And so, but that was when I really got to learn his bass playing, was on the Individual Thought Patterns record. And it was like, I did not know that you could write bass lines like that. That's my thing. Steve DiGiorgio, to me, in my opinion, flat out,
mhm.
the greatest metal bass player in metal. That's my opinion. I've watched him work.
He
I've
is
watched him
incredible.
construct. Absolutely. His technical prowess is unsurpassed by anybody. However, it's his mind that works in the beautiful way that it does, that constructs these bass lines that are, my God, they are beyond buffering. They are beyond, they are, they stand alone in their tastiness and complexity and just just killerness, and mixing that bass line with this riff and then these drums that are going on underneath it, and he's catching licks. That's the one thing that Steve's great at doing. We are really
Yeah.
fantastic at doing together. If
Which
I'm
all
doing
bass
a
players should do.
absolutely, catch those licks, and he does it more better than anybody else out there. He absolutely stands alone in the genre of metal and bass playing. Like, there is nobody like him. And that's, and the fact he's my brother, he's one of my best friends of all time, like we just get each other full on, so that is really cool. And that's one thing that I took from our initial playing days. And one thing that I took from Chuck was, that was my first time being with a project that I wasn't I wasn't a founder of Dark Angel, but that Dark Angel, kind of, I made it my own, in a lot of ways. And with Death, it was like I just had to concentrate on drums. So I became a drummer with Death, and like learning how to communicate with, guys from Dark Angel. I was with them since I was a teenager. I was 17 when I joined Dark Angel. Those guys were 19, so we were all kids growing up together, learning certain aspects of this industry together. And by the time I was with Death, that was 8 some odd years after that. So I knew a few things, and it allowed the communication to be what it was, and Chuck was, he was a very complex guy, like there would be some days when, life would be challenging for him. And so that's when you just try to be a pal and go, look, I know you're going through something, what you're going through, I might not be going through, but let's try to understand how your mind is working with this. And so that just taught me gave me, how ways to figure out how to communicate, how to accept communication from other people that are going to come in and out of your life. So there you go. And it was a blast writing all the material with Chuck, like the Individual Thought Patterns album. We did that in 3 weeks.
Just mind-blowing.
3 weeks. I was mind blown by that at the time. I was like, wow,
I can only imagine.
And nowadays, that's adorable. Like,
right.
God, sometimes getting 3 weeks, if I got 3 weeks to work on a record, yeah, there's so many times when the first time I am playing these songs are, in the recording studio. I learned them on the way to the studio, that kind of thing. And so
holy shit.
Yeah, well, that's DethKlok for you. I mean, that's how DethKlok.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
Right. However, the Symbolic album, we had like 6 months, 9 months, something like that. 9 months, I think it was, to go over to get that one together. And that's why you notice there's those are 2 different records. They stand on their own, in their own ways. To me, Individual Thought Patterns, there is an immediacy to it, like the train fall off the track. What's that?
A little bit of a rushing factor.
A little bit, yeah, and you hear it in the drumming. You hear it in the song. The songs weren't very well lived in, so you get that immediacy right out of the gate. and that's how Symbolic was, um, in a separate world. The songs did have a little bit of time to just kind of sit and set and coalesce together, in a way that individual thought patterns was, it's like you throw the dice and that's what you come up with. And with Symbolic, we had so
Still
much time.
badass though.
Yeah, I did both albums. They're both. I don't have a favorite album. The
Oh,
one
that's
thing
got
I
to be
do,
tough.
right. I do feel like there are moments on Symbolic where I wish I did not overplay like I did. I really felt like you could have changed my name to fill all gaps, for the album. There wasn't a lot of like, and Steve DiGiorgio is who pointed it out to me. He's like,
Oh
on this
shit.
song over here, I wish you'd laid off the kick drum just a little bit, allow me to kind of come up with something that where you and I are just really grooving, just really locking in super solid. But you got that really crazy kick going on, and I'm just trying to, what do I do? So Steve helped me, like, okay, learn how to serve the song. And that is one of the things that I took from like the Symbolic album. On the next pile of albums that I put out, I really did try to serve the song more than being the lead drummer. Like, hey, look at all this stuff I can do. And a
Man,
friend of mine,
just your grooves alone though, is just amazing to all of us. So, it's like when you really go a little bit more ham into filling and stuff, it's like, oh shit. That just
that,
kind of like made it that much tastier. But yeah, I totally feel that because I felt like I've done that on a couple of records myself, believe me.
sure.
I know how that feels. The record I did 5 years ago, I'll listen to him and go like, why the hell did I do that?
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's, the, just having, like, that's one of the approaches that I tried to take with individual and Symbolic, was try to, like with thrash metal, with Dark Angel, there were certain elements where I would try to bring a bit of originality, like, hey, a fresh new, angle to things, the double kick
Mm-hmm.
patterns and fills, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no one
The
else was
speed
really
and
doing
the right, like the speed and the intensity. And since I only had the one, all you got to do, Gene, is just come up with drum beats and play some fills over the top of that. I tried to create beats that hadn't been heard before, like in on individual thought patterns at the time. There were a lot of, just try to do things that you just haven't heard anybody do. And for Symbolic, the same kind of thing, like God, Zero Tolerance, the chorus of Zero Tolerance is like, what in the hell is that? Like, okay, just try to do something that you just haven't heard. You haven't heard it a million times before, so just try to create some with some originality or something. Just try to do something, but also musical that can be understandable. That's where the Neil Peart really came out. It's like, he's got a million beats throughout his history with Rush, that those are amazing beats. They're challenging, they're technical to a point, but they're not so ungettable. That's what I would try to do too, just like, yeah, try to make things challenging, but try not to just, go so over the top that you just can't figure these out.
And it's such a big, kind of a transition going from thrash to death metal. There was at one point where you did a record for Old Man's Child, which is symphonic black metal.
Right.
It's like, was it just fun to go through those different styles?
Absolutely.
Or
And
did you
none of
find
it.
it incredibly difficult?
No, God, no. It's just Gene, be yourself. Just be a drummer here. Just be, like, because I am not, even with, thrash metal, Dark Angel, we never considered ourselves thrash metal. We were caffeine metal, whatever the hell that means. But I was
metal on steroids.
right. Yeah. Well, I popped caffeine pills before we play, and I was on a lot of caffeine back in those days. That's where the speed came from. The speed
Uncle
of the
No-Nos.
songs. Yeah, it was Vivarin.
Oh, Vivarin.
They were stronger than No-Dos. So
that's true.
Pop a couple Vivarins, and so that's where the tempos came from, But even then, it's like I'm playing in a thrash band. I'm playing with, under the banner of thrash, but I tried not to be a thrash metal drummer. No, nobody was. There was no thrash metal before. We were, I am OG thrash metal. I'm there from the very, very beginning of it, up in Los Angeles. That's where I grew up, I was at Metallica's second show. I'd seen Slayer when they were kind of the cover band, and they kind of looked like, they were wearing spandex and zebra stripes and that sort of thing.
Kerry King had hair.
All that. That's when I started working for him. He was,
which is a whole nother story in and of itself.
Right? Totally. Yeah, totally.
Incredible.
Indeed. Well, yeah, that's it. And so, punk was our biggest influence, and for me, like, the best punk drummer flat out was Spit Sticks from Fear. If for those who are unfamiliar with Fear's material, check out their first album called The Record. The drumming is incredible, and all the musicianship is incredible with Fear. They were the thinking man's punk band, but they
intelligent punk.
Yeah. That would, kick your ass as well. Lee Bing was a tough dude, when I was growing up. But thrash metal, the templates of thrash metal come from Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, Motorhead, and Anvil, and Raven, and all that. So we were taking those templates, applying them towards thrash metal, and thrash metal absolutely, gave birth to death metal. That I've always felt that, and and
definitely the evolution.
Darn tootin', without thrash metal, there is no death metal. That's what I always felt, and that argument of who created death metal, it's a valid one. I'm on both sides. I'm
right.
Gigantic Jeff Becerra Possessed fan, gigantic Chuck Schuldiner Death fan. So I try to stay out of all that. But hey, Possessed had the song death metal, But anyway, yeah, just being able to dip just me into all those styles. It's like I always, even when I was young, it's like I always want to transcend whatever style. I don't want to be known as that's a thrash metal drummer, that's a death metal drummer, that's a melodic death metal drummer, or that's a technical metal drummer. I just wanted to be known as a drummer, and that's what I would like to be my legacy, which I don't do enough non-metal albums that show my things that I can do outside of flying double bass and thrashing beats. I don't do enough of those to leave that kind of legacy, but I've done enough of it to explore that legacy, like a lot of Devin Townsend records and just other albums.
Oh, yeah. That's exactly where I was about to segue, because,
fair enough.
Going from Death and then, a couple of, different albums in between there, you find yourself in Strapping Young Lad, which it just was creative beyond all recognition at that point. Did you kind of feel like you really fell into a situation where that you could just be as creative as you wanted to, and it was just so heavy, especially working with such a dynamic vocalist like Devin Townsend?
Absolutely. And that was Strapping, towards the end of my, Death era or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Strapping was the exact band that I was looking for. Um, and Devin was the perfect, just collaborator that I wanted to be there with. Because like we had started working on, like with Chuck, we started working on the Sound of Perseverance material. A lot of that stuff was, when I heard Sound of Perseverance, I was like, I remember this song. I remember this song. I remember that pile of riffs. I remember, all this stuff. And I was taking the drums into a totally different direction than what ended up on Sound of Perseverance. I was stripping them back because of symbolic being, fill all gaps, overplaying, all that kind of stuff. I wanted to strip them down to where they really started serving the songs, and it wasn't. It was going to trip people out. People are going to be like, "Hey, what happened? We wanted this next evolution of just total psychotic drums, where you can't figure out what you're playing there, Jim, because they're so over the top complicated." That was precisely what I didn't want for that material, and um, ironically, that material came out, a number of years later with that exact drum approach from Richard Christie. It's like, let's just play everything, like fill all gaps. Richard just went crazy on that record. It is a challenging album to try to cover, but it can be done. But it takes a lot of focus to figure out what in the world he's playing on songs like Spirit Crusher. But
Right.
with that being said, I really wanted a project that like Chuck was getting so into like traditional metal. He was reverting back to like the early 80s kind of approach. 84 was about where he was cutting off what he was listening to and being influenced by. And you do hear it in the riffs. And I, with Dark Angel, we were part of something that was brand new and fresh. Again, I'm
Yeah.
OG thrash metal. That kind of music had never existed in the form that we and all the other, all the Slayers and Possessed and all the heavier bands were doing. And then when it came time for Death had already gone through, obviously, their just brutal death metal era, and I was a part of their, I guess, second and third eras of the technical metal, technical death metal, and then the helped garner in the birth of melodic death metal. You got your Symbolics, you got your Heartworks from Carcass, taking death metal in a more melodic phase. And kudos to Chuck for not paying attention to what people might be saying, like, man, I just want to hear scream bloody gore, and people were saying that, and Chuck just he had a singular vision, and so, however, that vision for me was, I really wanted to start looking towards the future, and the future of metal, and the future of what power and just psychosis and modernness. Let's 84 already happened.
Right.
Kick-ass year,
It's time to
83,
up the
another great
game.
year. But let's, it is 1996. Let's see
Right.
how we can enter, the next millennium or whatever. What kind of new sounds can we bring? New approaches, new everything. And I got that in spades with Devin and Strapping Young Lad, and it was just so amazing to put the City album together. And yeah, that was a great time. We rehearsed that album 4 times, and then we went in to record it. And that was over the course of about 4 months. I remember
Wow.
meeting Devin in very late February 1996. We met at a Iron Maiden Fear Factory show at a place called the Palace in
Mm.
Los Angeles. Which, if anybody's familiar with the Palace, that is about an 1,800 seater 1,500 seater. Iron Maiden was playing a 1,500 seater. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. Of course, it was their Blaze Bayley era, but
Mm-hmm.
Devin and I had a mutual friend who had been trying to get us together. Like, hey, Gene, you got to meet my friend Devin. It's like, oh, I love that guy, man. I love Devin. I watched Headbangers Ball for 3 months straight to see the top of his head on that Steve Vai video. That kick-ass video, Down Deep Into the Pain. What a great song. What a great introduction of Devin to the world. Like, he comes out looking like this kick-ass Cenobite, like, God, how cool was that?
It was definitely, very, very original.
Absolutely, and so I'm like, that person, I like the cut of his jib. I think that guy's cool. And so when a mutual friend of mine, like, hey man, come meet Devin. He's going to be at that Maiden show tomorrow, that Fear Factory show. Come on out and just say, hey, we met. We set up and we set up a rehearsal. He was in town writing, and we got together and rehearsed. And we only had like 2 hours to rehearse. That was the block of time that we had at my local rehearsal studio. So we rehearsed for a couple hours. I played a number of songs from. He already had Heavy is a really heavy thing out. So I remember learning SYL and In the Rainy Season and a song called Filler and another one called The Critic maybe, and played a few of those songs and just to show him, okay, I got some chops here. And then we ended up writing the song Oh My Fucking God. We had 10 minutes to go. Like, hey, what time is it? We got to get out of here in 10 minutes. Okay, play a beat. Just come up with a beat. And then after you do that beat, switch to the baga, 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 or whatever. And then flip that over to the thrash metal beat. And so I came up with the intro beat to Oh My Fucking God. And that's got some Steve Smith, Vinny Appice,
sure.
that right at the beginning of it, that was my move then. It was great. We wrote Oh My Fucking God in 10 minutes. We wrote the majority of the song in the first 10 minutes and in the last 10 minutes. And Devin, as we left, he gave me a cassette he's like, here's a bunch of songs that I put together. Here's my rudimentary drum programming. And when I was listening to that drum programming, I'm like, this is not rudimentary at all. This man knows how to program. And this is 1995, 96 technology. It wasn't we were cutting and pasting.
Not as advanced today.
No, you're working with the little Roland drum machines or the Alesis HR16 drum machines, all that kind of thing, which I got pretty prevalent on. But yeah, he was a great drum programmer. He came up with some really killer patterns and beats and things like that. So I'm like, let me, he's just like, just do you to this. And so, we went another 2 months or so without rehearsing, but I had this tape. So I just learned it and got back in the studio for the second rehearsal and showed him what I was coming up with. And I remember him telling me later, he was like, I was actually kind of disappointed with your playing the first time we got together. And I was like, I understand that. Yeah, I've heard you were killer. And I was like, I remember that it wasn't, I had gone about 2 months without drumming before the first time we got together,
You always fall back like a
my chops were
whenever that happens
at the time. And I think it was the second time I'd been not rehearsing it, but learning it. And I learned the stuff. And I remember I was giving a bunch of drum lessons at that period. So I was doing more drumming than, I'm not a lesson giver either, believe me.
I would take one.
No, gosh, you wouldn't want one. But the next time we got together, Devin's like, okay, yeah, I get it, And those were the first blast beats I was ever, really playing, that kind of thing. And so, we
which evolved out of thrash, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big time. I mean, people thought I was playing blast beats with Dark Angel. Like,
See,
look at those blast beats in the Burning of Sodom. I'm like, no, that's double time. I just really fast hand. They're like, oh, I thought you were doing, bugga 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 bugga. No, it's all that. But
mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah. But the unison blast, whatever that's called, I remember first hearing Nick Barker doing that with Cradle of Filth and
Yep.
the kind of the suffocation Mike Smith blast sort of kind of thing, whatever the name of that is. But that was the one that Devin liked, and that was really powerful. Pop, 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 with the double kicks going underneath it. There was an example of like, well, gosh, I mean, I wasn't really good with doing a single kick under all that. I would do the da, 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 da,
Oh, sure. Like, that's the way I do it as well.
A lot of guys were, like the Pete Sandoval fans would be like, "Oh, you're cheating if you're not." I'm like, absolutely cheating. I'm not gonna kill myself with one foot and do all this other stuff. Because I have plans, and
that's right.
Those plans were, if you're doing this kind of thing, and you're just keeping time essentially, pop 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 unison, then start coming up with patterns under those. Yeah,
it totally frees you up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like, okay, well, that's I could go just alternate strokes, or I could kill myself and try it that way, or I could try to elevate this thing that exists and elevate it into some kind of musicality by creating patterns underneath, and I'm like, nobody else is doing that. Try this, HOGLAN, and see how it treats you. And it became really fun. It just like, how can you come, what kind of fun pattern can you come up with while you're just unisoning, but it gives you, just an example to create some patterns and have some fun with it, and really, make that blast beat turn into something other than what it's historically been. You get to make some music out of a blast beat, for God's sake. So there you go. That's pretty fun.
That makes it that much more amazing, in my opinion. So one of the questions from the comment section, Todd says, I saw strapping with Fear Factory and Soilwork. Devin spit throughout the show in the air on the audience. Did you ever get a shower from Devin?
No, but he'd bathe me from time to time when I requested it, rub my back on it. No. You know what? Devin's spit has never touched my person, let me tell you. But I believe it that he was spitting. God, Jesus, God, he...
Such an intense performer.
Absolutely. And that was, and it was a way, like when Devin decided that, hey man, this is not for me anymore. I understood that because, back in the Heavy is a Really Heavy thing and the City days, he had a lot of anger inside him over some things that had happened in his recent history. And sure. I understood that. And he had a lot of aggression that he wanted to get out. And a lot of that aggression was, being the Don Rickles of metal, just ripping into the audience and like, just, I can't believe he just called us those names, like, here's my ticket. I bought this ticket to your show, and you're telling me I suck and I should suck a turd to a point and stab myself to death with it. Like, God, just insulting the crowd. And it got to the point where we would just feed him lines during the day. And then sure enough, there's that line, coming out. Somebody would tell him something during the day and he'd just use it that night. And so we had a blast doing it. And there were a couple of times when, just Don Rickles was not the ideal approach for a frontman's, influence at times. And there would be times when the audience would take rather unkindly to it. There's a couple times when we've gotten into brawls and things like that
Oh
from the
shit.
stage, and because we're just harassing people. And but that was one thing about Devin. Devin is to this day is the most non-violent person
I totally believe it.
imaginable. But especially these days. But Devin would be like, "Look, I got you and Byron standing behind me, you two big hulking behemoths. I feel pretty safe on stage."
Right.
Uh, and then, of course, the tragedy that occurred that pretty much stopped all of it, and we all know that tragedy. And it's like, let's not put anybody in any kind of danger where if it's somebody taking offense to something that you might say on stage and jumping on that stage and wanting to duke with you, that's one thing. But then
Right.
things took an unimaginably dark turn. And so I think that was pretty much around the time when Devin was like, "Man, I don't know that how I feel about my shtick." And there was a number of other things going on for Dev as well, but I think a lot of that, helped guide him right out of, the that sort of persona into the lovable, happy Dev that we all know and love now. So there you go.
Exactly.
Right.
So, scaling back a little bit, there was a comment that is going to definitely lead us into one of your current bands. Kyler says he wants to ask, what is your favorite DethKlok song you got to work on?
Boy, I'd like to know, was that autocorrect on your DethKlok? That's
Oh,
adorable.
I didn't even catch that. Okay, good
Right.
thing that I understood where he was going with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it happens all the time. Like, God, like even with the people tell me all the time. They ask me, "Hey, man, what's Death Angel up to?" Or, "I love your work in Death Angel,"
Oh,
and
fuck.
I get
How?
that all the time because of you got a Dark Angel, you got a Death, and
Eh,
so I get that. I was like, well, I don't know exactly what Death Angels. I think Death Angel's writing a new record right now. I don't know. I can call up one of the guys and see what they're doing, but Death Lock, we get called that from time to time. So, but
you know,
right,
big old headlock, lock you up. You can't escape.
there you go. That's right. But what was my favorite song to do? That I recorded? God, there are so many. There are just so
It's
many
so
Death
hard.
Clock songs that I love recording. I love playing. I remember all the recording sessions. I mean, there are a million. There are tons of albums that I've done where I I don't remember them. I don't remember recording this album. Like I'll hear something somewhere. I'll be like, that sounds vaguely familiar, and somebody be like, "Dude, that's you on drums." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like, who is this?" Kind of thing. Um, and but I remember all the Death Clock recording sessions, and just and a lot of the Galacticon stuff as well. I got to admit,
Mm.
first Galacticon album, I don't remember recording. There's an example. But all the Death Clock stuff, God, I'm so like I care about Death Clock. I care about Brendan. I care about the entirety of Death Clock, that I really immerse myself in Death Clock. And, it would be hard to choose one song out of the many. I can tell you flat out my least favorite song to record. That was Laser Cannon Death Sentence. God, brutal. That was brutal. Um,
Bit of a workout.
Indeed, I freely admit I had to take that one in three parts. There's no way I'm going to do this entire thing like this, so I took that in three parts. Um, but yeah, there are just so many killer classic Death Clock songs that how do you choose one?
You can't.
Right? There are just so many kick-ass tunes, and just having getting Brendan is also an amazing drum programmer. He comes up with great stuff. And Brendan is always like, dude, I suck as a programmer. Just the drums on here are
I always say that.
basic templates. Just you figure out something that A is fun for you to play, and B, just make it. I have it. This is so rudimentary. I have a feeling you can up the game on it, and by all means do so. And so, however, that's like I was saying earlier. Pretty much every DethKlok album, with the exception of this latest one, Death Album 4, the first time I am playing the songs in the studio is the first time I'm playing the songs. Like, what's being recorded is my first time playing the songs. So there are times when I might have gotten, because we album number 1, we mentioned it a number of times. We pretty much constructed it as we went, song by song. Brendan would have snippets of songs, and we would just kind of build the songs as we went, kind of thing. And then, I would take a moment, kind of put that entire song in my head, and then come back into the studio and track it. So we did that for the first couple of records. And by Death Album 3, I think I was starting to get like some tracks in advance, but I was never given, they came pretty close to the actual recording session. So I was able to kind of check them out on the way to the studio, learn them on the way to the studio. And then, we got a few days to record. So, take 2 songs the first day, just try to learn them. And at the hotel that night, take the next day's songs, just try to burn those into your head. And that's kind of how DethKlok worked on this latest album. This was the first one that, since it was going into the movie, Army of the Doomstar, a lot of these songs were being written for, this might go in the movie, this might not. That's how early that's how early I was involved in the process. So having the chance to take a crack at the songs on my kit. Oh, by the way, my kit is sitting right here, by the way. I'm in my virtual studio. This is, let me see if I can do this without breaking the. This is the kit
where all the magic happens, people.
Yeah, I've got a number of them. This is my recording kit. This is the one that I've tracked. Let me see. Death Album 3, the clock opera thing, Death Album 4. I did, let me see, what was the latest, what was that latest Testament record? I'm looking at Titans of Creation. I did that one. I've just done a million albums with this kit. It's a great recording kit. And my
metal, just deliciousness.
Yeah, right. That's pretty fun. And I'm going to be bringing my drum tech, Jeff. Oh, shit, I knew that was going to happen.
Oh no! Gene's down. Gene's down.
No, let's see. I did not. The screen did not break. I was always afraid of that. That's why I didn't want to move that. These little.
Oh no! What? Just got to get your mic back on. Wonder if I can fix that. There we go. He's back. Yes.
Yeah, I accidentally hit that button. But yeah, that was my main concern, because these little holder thingies, they don't hold.
I mean, it's been doing so well.
I know, but I was like, don't move it, don't move it, don't move it, don't pull it around to show the kit.
No, I my heart just like went through my ass just now. I was like,
mine too, because these darn iPads are so damn expensive. I've broken iPads doing this exact same thing when I was streaming, doing the exact same thing. Just fell through. Usually, I'm smart about it, and I put towels at the base, because it's just a mic stand, and
right.
It's got I took the mic stand off and put one of those little gripper jobbers on it. Tell you what, I'm gonna take my shoes off. I'm going to set them at the base of this. So if it happens again, at least, because it banged on that thing. Okay, there we go. At least something will grab it. We'll take it. All right, there we go. That'll do.
Awesome.
But yeah, it has been through a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm bringing my drum tech Jeff is bringing my my chrome kit. That, you know, if anybody seen me playing a chrome kit over the last few years with the attack rack, that's coming back into the studio here pretty soon. You know, just it's a fun kit to play. I have kits stationed all over the world, so that's pretty good.
Is that the one?
That one right there. And you could see over to the right, you could see Thumper's foot.
Amazing.
You can see Jeff, my tech's foot. But yeah, that kit right there, that's coming back to the studio. We just finished the DethKlok run with that one, and you know, it's a great kit. That one's a Pearl reference, and they're amazing. You know, those are just so killer and crushing sounding, and this one here is a session custom, you know, just masters maple kind of thing here, and it sounds great in the studio. And yeah, so I've got a bunch of kits, I tell you.
I've used export series in the past quite a bit, especially for like a lot of the like heavier stuff that I used to do. But now, you know, I'm doing a lot of doom metal these days, so believe it or not, I'm using a Swing Star.
Wow, I had a Superstar. Wait, Swing Star. I remember the Swing Stars. Yeah, are those? I'm thinking Imperial Star. Imperial.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah.
Board, but the Swing.
Uh-oh. I think you froze. Are you back?
No, I'm here.
Yep. Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You froze for a second. I didn't freeze. You froze. Fortunately, we have. I'm sure we both have pretty strong Wi-Fi's. You know, streaming Wi-Fi. I got streaming Wi-Fi in here, so I hope I didn't damage this iPad by dropping it. But there you go.
Probably not. So the one band we haven't talked about was when I saw your Drumeo feature, which for everybody out there in Black Flame Land is like the drummer network to, you know, learn so much stuff. And for like the longest time, which don't get me wrong, me personally, I loved seeing a lot of like the fusion legends and the, you know, a lot of the funk that was brought through there as well. But they finally had Gene on, and you opened up with a which I believe was the current Testament record at that time, and it was just sick, and I immediately ran out and bought the record.
Fun. Well, thank you.
So how did you find yourself playing with Testament?
Well, it kind of goes back initially to 96. Chuck had reached out and said, "Hey man, we're kind of in between drummers. You know, might you be interested in coming up and jamming with us?" And at that time, he said, it might not be under the Testament name. And I was like, "Well, Chuck, you're a vocalist, you know, that, you know, you're a formidable vocalist, you know, wouldn't mind working with you. So that sounds pretty cool. So let's see how it goes." That ended up being the Demonic record. And, you know, Chuck's, I remember, you know, that album, it was a challenging Testament album for Testament fans due to the vocals. I thought Chuck did a great job, and I loved that album. I thought it was a great record, you know, like
insane of a record. I loved it.
I did too, man. And I was like, man, you Testament fans, I mean, let this band evolve, you know, like don't just on them because they're not doing Trial by Fire or In the New Order or Into the Pit. Again, they're trying something. They're trying to evolve with the times, and let this band explore their position. Next album, The Gathering, comes out. Everybody loves the hell out of that one. Doesn't sound all that much different than Demonic to me, but it's aggressive.
It's like sticker shock.
Right. That's kind of it. They just like when people heard, Symbolic for the first. That album was not universally praised by any means. When Symbolic came out, people were like, what the hell happened? So I get it. That's why I'm never afraid to be involved in a project that's going to push some boundaries and maybe not give you, just give you what you expect on a silver platter. Like I'm very cool with like people scratching their heads after hearing a record, like Alien or something, from Strapping, like any of that stuff. It's okay.
That's those purists we're always talking about.
What's that?
The purists.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you gotta love them, and they're backbone of everything. I'm not much of a purist on a lot of things. I'm okay with evolution and things like that. But when 2011 rolled around, I got a saying, look, we have a deadline for this album. Paul is our drummer, Mr. Oh
my goodness.
An injury. Oh, there we're back. I'm back.
Yep.
Are you back? You are frozen. There you are.
I'm here.
Am I frozen?
I am here. I am well.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a windstorm tonight.
Oh, yep. Got you. Okay,
I'm here.
Fair enough.
Yep. So sorry.
Yeah. So he's like, hey man, we no worries. He had said, look, we've got an album we got to do. Would you be interested in coming up and working on what eventually became the Dark Roots of Earth record? And I was like, yeah, sure, man. You're catching me at a perfect time, because at that time the band that I was with was ending their touring cycle, and they were going to go off and start writing. So I'm like, hey, if you need a session guy for this, I'm your dude. So we took a couple of months, and 6 weeks or something like that, maybe. Or no, I'm Scott. What am I thinking? 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks. Jesus, another album put together in 3 weeks. And then I remember, a few, I left the session going, hey man, guys ever need anything, just reach out. If I'm available, if you need some road work out of me or anything, just let me know. Sure enough, not too long after that, I get a call from Chuck again saying, hey, we've got John Tempesta, as our drummer. We're going out with Anthrax, but Johnny also plays with the Cult, as a lot of people know. He's got about a 2-week gap where he's got some commitments. So, could you come in and play play a couple of weeks of this run with us? And I was like, sure, no problem. Chuck sent me a set list, and I learned a number, I learned the songs that they needed. It was mostly from just listening to them. I didn't get kit action with that, because I was rehearsing material for the band Viking, whose album No Child Left Behind. I was going into to track that, and then directly from that album, like I was leaving when the night I was done. The next morning I was leaving to start up with Testament. That's just how the scheduling worked. I didn't have any time to really go over the Testament material all that much. And then, like the day before I'm leaving for the the Viking record, I was going to spend like 3 days, 4 days in the studio with them. Um, I I got in touch with Eric Peterson just to say, hey man, here's the songs I'm learning. I had a few questions for him. He's like, well, send me that list that you've got, and he sends me a text back going, these are not the songs we are playing. When did you get this set list? I'm like, Chuck and Johnny T sent it to me, and he's like, this is not our set list. Like, what? I'm like, okay, well, send me the proper set list, and let me try to figure that thing out.
Yes,
so
please.
There was a number of songs that were not on the original set list. So I remember getting no time to go over it before, because I'm in the studio now. I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it was one of those
Holy
things,
crap.
like, this is how I work. Like, I'll track a number of songs that day. That night at the hotel, I start working on the next songs for the next day. And then,
Sure.
just keeps on going forward. So there wasn't any time to be pulling up, Testament tunes off of, YouTube or anything. So on the way, I remember we figured out a way to like download all the songs onto a compact, onto a CD. And I learned the songs on the 2-hour flight from Fort Wayne to Texas, where they played. I learned the songs on the plane, and I landed, went right to sound check. But they had told me, like, no worries, man, we're going to get an extra super long sound check. So we're going to be able to rehearse. Maybe we have a 16 song set, something crazy. We'll probably get to rehearse 10 of those songs. And I was like, okay, well, that's helpful. We got time to do one song in sound check. Whew. And that was it. And I remember that song was The Preacher. And
man.
That was the one, that was the opening song that night. So we at least got the opening song together, and then I just winged it. And
that's the mark of a true musician, though. You know what I mean? Some of the, even like a lot of the jazz legends and stuff, I mean, sometimes that's just how it is. And if you really know who you're playing with really well, it's like you can just follow them, even if you don't know the material to a T. You know what I mean?
Well,
there's not a lot of metal drummers that can say that. There just isn't.
Fair enough. I do know that I have experienced some things that a lot of other drummers or people might not have experienced. So I just try to put all that experience towards the next time something crazy like this happens. Right. People know about me jamming with Opeth, and that came about in something very, very similar. They had lost their drummer Martin that afternoon, kind of thing, and so they approached me, and I was like, let's do this, let's figure this out. So I learned their set I had about 4 hours to learn it, and that night we're playing Opeth songs. So
and you killed it.
Well, I as well as it could have been hopefully killed. I got through it. And I was in the fortunate position of, they were about 10 shows into this tour. We all were about 10 shows into this tour, and I caught every moment of their sets. So I had 10 shots at these songs, just absorbing. That's how I learn songs. I don't read. I'm musically illiterate.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I agree. I just that's how my style came about, because I taught myself. What's that? Autodidactic. I didn't learn from a book.
I think so. Yeah.
From somebody else's. Yeah, I did not learn from somebody else's. Like, you have to do it this way. I've been told so many times throughout my career that you can't do it this way. You're doing this wrong. Like,
bullshit.
Play open hand. Yeah, totally. Like, open-handed. You can't do that. Teaching yourself, you have to learn. You have to go buy a Mel Bay book. You have to learn the rudiments, all that
Oh
kind of stuff.
man.
And I just thought, man, I am too much of my own thinker to, you know, I'm not gonna learn a philosophy that is not my own.
Yes.
I apply that from life as well. Like I'm not a very good self-help follower. It's like I'm my own self-help. It's like,
Shit,
what would
if
Gene
that's
do?
your
What would you do
zen,
here?
that's your zen, you know.
That's what I figure. Um, so yeah, just I learn by memorization. Like I understand, and an actual reading illiterate person will memorize a menu to their favorite restaurant. That
That's
kind of
right.
thing. I do that with music, and
It's your ritual.
right, and like people tell me, yeah, well, I know when you're learning a tune because you got the headphones in and you sit back doing this. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's how I'm learning. My wife will come in and she's like, "Oh, dude, I've seen you do this thousands of times, just laying on the bed, just doing your tapping and hitting the
I'm
crash."
guilty.
We all are. That's how we do it. So yeah, But there you go. But I guess back to the Drumeo thing. That was an honor to be able to do that, and just having being able to because I'm not much of a teacher. I do clinics, but I have no idea what you're going to learn at a Gene Hoglan clinic. Like, because I'm going to get on that mic and I'm going to just babble, and just
Well,
it turns into a
whether it's a
comedy
warm
routine.
up or stretching exercises, the legendary ankle weights.
All right. Yeah, man. I got a pair of them sitting over here somewhere, probably.
Shit, I thought you had them on right now.
All right. God. My tech thumper, Jeff, while we were on this DethKlok tour, he sent me this article that was he's about the only well I don't read a lot of articles on myself, but he's like, dude, like, and he said, like, what kind of cockamamie horse shit is this? And I was like, you have my attention, and it was this article about what does Gene wear on his ankles? The mystery is solved here. And I'm like, mystery? Like ankle weights? I mean, what kind of mystery is it? I've never been a clickbait article until this one. It's one of those things you got to keep hitting the page, and they just like, we all know what clickbait is. It's my very first clickbait article. And at the end of the article, I'm like, oh, finally, it's like some 20-page thing. I'm like, finally, they're going to say they're ankle weights. They said that they are some crazy, like, ankle percussion cymbals, like, I'm like, and you even got you got it wrong, So
Right.
that was pretty damn funny. God, I probably still got that thing on my phone somewhere here, but oh God, that thing was hilarious. I was cracking up when I got
I
that message
bet.
from Jeff saying, like, what kind of horse shit is this? I was just like, wait, that doesn't sound good, but there you go. But pretty damn fun.
It has served you time and time again. I am a believer in that method.
Darn
That if
tootin'.
you know what I mean, if you're putting that kind of pressure against yourself as you're playing on a steady basis, it literally is going to make you feel lighter on your feet.
Absolutely. Darn
Is
tootin'.
it
Oh,
easy? No, but you do it. Up there it is. That's
there
fantastic.
is no, and God, just at the end of it, it was such horseshit. But yeah, I mean, that was another, like back when I remember when, God, I could even tell you the exact date probably that I wore my first ankle weights, and that was getting ready for the Leave Scars record. And I'd mentioned this in a number of articles before that about a week or so before we went in the studio, I lost my legs. Like my double bass just wasn't reacting the way it wasn't working. I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong here? So I applied a lot. I applied some of my baseball,
Yep.
experience with the batter's donut, and people have probably read this. The batter's donut, and then you swing the bat with the batter's donut on, you pop that donut off, and your bat's lighter. So I thought maybe if I try that with ankle weights, maybe it'll improve me. Sure enough, it did, and so the leg weights have been a part of the history ever since. And it turns out that the reason I was losing my legs a week before the studio was that I was playing the songs so fast that
you burnt yourself.
I was I couldn't keep up with myself. So in the studio, when I took the tempos down just slightly, I was like, oh, okay, well, there you go. Now you're feeling it with the ankle. Your legs are doing what they should be doing, and had I not just there was no atomic clock. There was just a young idiot that just played as fast as I could all the time. If I hadn't just realized, oh shoot, I'm playing too fast, I probably would have never thought to use ankle weights. So it's a happy accident, and it's one that I'll preach forever, man. Anybody that's ever tried ankle weights has, at my suggestion, they've come back to me and said, dude, you are not kidding. Those things work. Like, well, they should. So there you go.
Fucking phenomenal. So knowing that, in about 7 minutes, you're going to have to,
I just got a notification that there is a delay. So let me see what time I get to maneuver. 6:20, 6:25. Okay, so that means it's up to you, but I have about another half hour to 40 minutes. I believe. So that's up to you if you want to use it. You know me, I love hearing myself talk, so I'll keep babbling.
Trust me and my viewers also are enjoying the hell out of this.
That's very kind of you. My wife loves telling me, she's like, you'll love this story. It's about you. And she'll tell me, hey, I like that story. That's pretty funny.
And little did you know, there was a baby reaper that was just in awe of you, since Dark Angel's inception.
That's very cool. Fortunate for that. Absolutely.
So you just did a tour with Baby Metal. So how did that little tour go for you? What was it like?
It was amazing. That was one of the most successful tours I've ever been on. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate that most tours I do these days, we attract a lot of folks to, and Baby Metal was a gigantic run. DethKlok was co-headlining it with Baby Metal, and I admit I wasn't all that familiar with their approach or their music or what they did. I never YouTubed them. I was familiar.
It's definitely an acquired taste.
Indeed. I was familiar with that song. It's called Gimme Chocolate, and it's got a very catchy J-pop chorus. But the one thing I realize about their music is they are heavy as balls. I mean, the metal portion of Baby Metal is metallic AF. I'll give them that, absolutely. And a friend of mine explained their music after seeing them. He was unfamiliar with them. He's like, I guess I would have to say they are, like death metal with 3 cheerleaders. I'm like, well, that makes some sense there, absolutely. But the tour was great, and their crew was fantastic, and DethKlok, our crew was fantastic. So we all got along really, really well, and we played a bunch of sold out shows together, and we're playing in front of 5,000 people a night. And some towns were, two shows in that town kind of thing. Um, sure, it could have been even larger, if I'm sure it could. So we lost us both there. We're back. But yeah, it was a great tour. Musically, they're killer. The guys in the band are great players, and their music's really
Excellent
catchy. I
backup band. I
would
have
catch
always
a
said
moment
that.
of their absolutely. Yeah, man, those guys are some serious players, and add the talent that is Jason Richardson into that mix. And the night is it's a night for musician folks. If you're into guitars, it was a night of guitar playing and crazy drumming all around, because the I don't know if I'm allowed to say any of the names of the band. I don't know if they're I know nothing about the baby metal just storyline. So I don't know if I can even
Right.
say the drummer's name, but their drummer is a very talented man. Every drummer, I mean, every musician on that stage was pretty darn crushing, So it was a really good time, and from time to time, DethKlok was able to have Laura Christine from Dark Angel join us on stage for
Oh
that song
wow.
"Go Into the Water," and that just thickened that song up so much. I mean, it's having three guitars doing, with triple harmonies. A lot of DethKlok is written for multiple guitars. There's a whole lot of harmonies going on. So, for me, we could add Laura Christine, third guitarist, into the entire show, and it would just be massive sounding because she's such a destructive player, So, but that was really cool having that occur. So, darn too.
What was it like? I don't know if you guys have done it this time around, but the fact that they had like a screen showing like the animated characters of Metalocalypse doing the stuff while you guys were playing. I forget which tour that was.
All
What
of
was it
them.
like? Oh, it has been all of them.
That
Okay.
that screen is the entirety of what our show is. Like that screen, our lighting on the band, we are in shadow, so
Oh my
it's kind of like
man.
a mystery science theater kind of
Yeah.
thing. There's no front light on the band. We want you looking at that big gigantic screen behind us and getting just mesmerized by what's happening, and you're being pummeled with this extremely just aggressive, tight music that is just, it is an absolute assault on your senses.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
just like you cannot explain it. You have to experience it. And there are so many folks that, you know, throughout history where, I'll be talking to somebody after the show, and they'll be like, guys that are like older than me, they'll be like, look, I've lived in this town my entire life. I've been to every single concert or club show or whatever for 30 years, 35 years, or however long it's been. I've seen the club shows, I've seen all the arena, big, gigantic shows, and this was the best concert I've ever been to in my entire life. And I would get that repeatedly. So that's pretty darn cool, and that is one thing that it's my responsibility every night to bring you the best possible show you could ever see in your life. So um, all the entire show is all to click track, and what the entire show is, it's one file. It's not like we stop the songs in between the songs. Like there is no time to stop. Like if you see DethKlok, it's just like assault from start to finish all the way. So
Woo!
there's no breakage in the set at all. There's 2 to 3 seconds in between songs, and we're off to the next
Damn,
one.
do you even get to sip water in between?
No, no, I don't, and that's why
Oh man.
I play with I use breath mints now.
Okay. I do
Yeah,
that with Altoids.
yeah, but this is what I pop a mint, and that's the hey Pure, give me a bunch of free stuff. No, that's the breath mints that I use, and I've got
Oh, they should sponsor you. Shit.
darn tootin'. Yeah, for the amount of expense these things are, man. These things are really expensive.
I can imagine.
But there's no aspartame in them, so that's why I use these. But yeah, I pop breath mints, and there are times when, like, there are tiny small breaks in the songs, like when we show a little comedy routine behind us, like
Right.
Bass Bones is up there babbling about something, or like there'll be a moment towards the end of the set where Nathan and Squiscar and Pickles all make an appearance on the microphone, kind of thing. So, and that's when I get to drink a little bit of water. But for the most part, it's just go, 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 and there's no room for error.
No, not at
like,
all.
Well, I've over the past 4 or 5 years. Well, what year are we in? I guess approaching 4 years. I've started rehearsing the show with a monitor with just I have a copy of the show. Brendan and I put the show together, well in advance.
Sure.
And we're working with the editor to, hey man, let's cut 2 seconds off of this, and then let's make this little song start while this one's fading out. The click track starts for this one, all that kind of stuff. We do all that kind of clerical work to the show. And
that is so much.
Right. And yeah, it's more than just playing drums to a click track, because you've got to pay attention. You've got to be cognizant to that screen that's going on behind you. And since I have been rehearsing with the monitor, it's been helpful, because all I'll do is I'll rehearse to the click track. I get click and like tracks. We have some backing tracks, keyboards and voices from time to time. And so I'm playing to a click track, and I'm playing to like voices. And when I'm rehearsing, I'm watching the screen that's over there, and I'm just memorizing all the visuals that are occurring. All the visuals are cut to the one. So it's like, I have the visuals memorized. That's added responsibility that I've taken, in case something goes awry, as has happened, just on this tour. I forget where we were at about a month or so ago. We're waiting for, the show started. I'm waiting to hear the click track start, and nothing is happening. And so I'm like, oh crap, and it's instantaneous, like from the opening, because we play that song Death Theme, the start of the TV show.
Oh yeah.
That's our opening song. We do kind of an extended version of it. But if the click track is not going, then oh shit, So I'm looking over there. There's just a strobing flash, We do that for 16 times, and so I've already started the song late, because you get a 4 count, you get a 4 count to come in on that thing. So I'm looking at the screen here, and I'm playing, and I also have to catch the song up to the next one, because now we're a little bit off, like I've started it late, so I got to catch up to things like that. Happen, they just happen. And
they do.
That's why they pay me the big bucks, because I'm all that responsibility is on my shoulders. If something goes wrong over here, a technical problem, I've got to take the entirety of the show in mind and get us back on track. And so that it happens from time to time, and I'm pretty darn prepared for it when it does. It took us 2 songs to get the click track back. And by the time we got the click track back, um, I and it was the second song in the set is from the very first album before
Mm.
before like Brendan and I were super involved with the cutting. So now everything's cut really sharp. That song is a song called Briefcase Full of Guts. It is not cut to the click. It's just kind of cut randomly. So I'm trying to figure out how do I get those random shots? How do I get those lock up onto a one? And, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I did a really good job that night. And like by the time we got to the end of that song, the song, we
Hmm.
2 clicks afterwards, and so we were that close to, and we were miles off. So that was pretty exciting, and everybody was like, Gene, how'd you do that? Oh my God, that was amazing. Holy shit, Jesus, man, that's just one of the most incredible things we've ever seen ever. And I like, thank you, but this is my job. This is my
Right.
job when something like that happens. So I appreciate it, but let's, what it was a stripes or whatever. Let's not start sucking our own D's, or whatever. Like it's I'm supposed to do this. That's what I am here for. That's when Brendan says there's nobody else that can do this like Gene. It's like for stuff like this because it's my job to get this done. It's something, if some kind of fire happens, it's my job on stage to put that darn fire out. So there you go.
Honestly, I don't think any other. I mean, there's all kinds of big names in extreme metal drumming that could do that. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I have 17 years of experience at it, so that's one
Which
thing.
it shows, man.
Well, that's pretty
I mean,
cool.
that's the mark of a true professional.
No,
Um, you know what I mean? And that's what myself, I try to do that. It's like if somebody misses a riff or something like that, or forgets a part, I know how to like keep everything
right?
going to let the crowd know that nothing bad happened. We planned this.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Yeah, totally. If you make a mistake, when it comes back around, make that exact same mistake, and people are like, "Oh, he meant to do that," that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the excitement of playing live. Even when you're playing to
Oh
a
yeah.
click, and you have so many intangibles that can occur at any time. That's part of the excitement. That's part of you know that's part of why we do what we do. Because there's a that X factor of craziness that could happen. You try to mitigate that, but if it happens, you just you show your experience by getting that train back on the track and uncapsizing the boat kind of thing.
And do you use inner ears for that?
Yeah,
For
I
DethKlok?
do. I do. Yeah.
I have always said that I think the era that we're used to. I mean, I started obviously later in the game than you did, but not ever having inner ears in the past. And all
Right.
you had was like a monitor sitting next to either your left ear. Well, yeah, it was
Right.
almost always the left ear. Like that's all you had to go off of to hear the rest of the guys,
Right.
because the venue is just pointing out to the crowd.
Hmm.
So, I think that experience that you have of so many years of doing that, like makes doing, fixing the problems like that much easier. I don't know if you feel that way, but
Well, that's
that and memorizing how shit goes.
right. Like I can play the entire Death Clock set with no backing. That's just I spend my entire days preparing for the show that night. Um, like that's the only thing I'm on the road for. That's the only thing I'm there to do is put on a great show for everybody every single night. You cannot have like this goes with any of my bands. You cannot have an off night. Like,
Nope.
there could be some kind of tragedy going on in your life backstage. And, fortunately, mine, not
Sure.
usually like, there could be something really crazy happening. You're,
Doesn't matter.
it does not matter, and, that's, you know, we are here to entertain. And, I realize I'm only an entertainer, but I take my job pretty darn seriously. So,
It's the best job in the world.
darn tootin'. I've always said that. I refer to myself as the legend of lethargy on many occasions. LOL. But and I do say that I do have a very blessed and charmed life that I definitely have to give it up to those folks who work hard for a living, to make money and put food on the table. Those folks deserve, the pats on the back. Um, I'm just here to entertain those folks that actually do work hard, because this life is not that challenging, I'll tell you,
And with all the upcoming bands, coming out of the underground, because that's one thing that my show focuses on is the best talent in the underground that haven't really hit the mainstream.
Mhm.
How do you feel like where the industry is going right now?
Well,
It's so different.
metal has to evolve, and it always does. Like, I mean, I am all about the evolution. And it's there. I remember 1983, and so many kick-ass bands were putting out stuff in 1983, and then thrash metal hit, and bands that were the next going to be the next big thing, just they got thrashed over. And a lot of folks could be like, man, this new stuff is just noise, man. It's just punk rock, man. I used to get it all the time, from
Oh,
all the rockers at my high school that, like rock and all that stuff, and heavy metal. And, they would tell me my band is noise and we're punk rock. We're nothing more than punk and all that kind of stuff. Um, and I understand that. I get that. Here comes the new guard, and we're not paying attention to your feelings. Like, if you like that traditional metal of 1982 and 1981, we are here to kick that door down and force our way into your life, metal fan. And so that's the way it is now. I mean, bands, I like say a Bring Me the Horizon, who
ah,
are incorporating elements of electronic music. And a lot of the bands that incorporate elements of, I'm not being facetious here, boy band approaches, like
yep.
vocally, very much so. I think all these bands are influenced by Linkin Park, a very popular band. I hear a lot of Linkin Park in all of the latest bands, which, if you're a Linkin Park fan, you're like, great, the legacy lives on. Um,
Kind of like
and
the metalcore stuff. Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, man. It was very much that, and you know, electronic dance music. And but evolution is here. Evolution's here to be. I mean, it doesn't mean, it is. Are my projects going to keep putting out albums? Yes, we are. We're going to keep doing what we do because we have our audience. And a lot of, I realize maybe gosh, I don't know, thy art is murder. They're heavy, but like Bring Me the Horizon, or some of the other bands that might, you know, populate the top of the charts. A lot of their fans might not be that interested. Hell, Baby Metal is a gigantic band. I come to
They
learn.
really are. Yeah.
I had no idea. And just because you're into baby metal, does that mean you're into DethKlok? Absolutely not. I
Right.
mean, and there are a lot of DethKlok fans that might shy away from a baby metal approach, but it's all loud, it's all heavy, and that's one thing I will take today's music, even back to new metal and Korn and Limp Bizkit and bands like that. I will take that over the cheesy cock rock of the 80s, all the radio stuff, because it was heavy. All the
Right.
Korn, whether you liked Korn or not back in 98 or whatever, they were down tuned and they were trying to be heavy. You weren't hearing, um, you know, songs about partying or whatever, just all the 80s cliched that was challenging, you know,
Yes. Very
in
emotional.
the 80s. Yeah, it was a challenging kind of music to like. I was not into the cock rock of the 80s at all. The commercial, rock dude,
The
ooh.
glam era.
What's that? Yeah, yeah, glam. Yeah, all that stuff. Not my scene whatsoever. And ironically, I liked all of those bands when they were in the clubs. I saw all those bands from LA when I was a 13-year-old, 14-year-old. I was just talking to my tech Jeff yesterday. I was like, we were talking about the whiskey. My tech Jeff,
Hmm.
he's the house monitor man at the whiskey. And I said, the first time I was at the whiskey was 42 years ago this week. I saw
Damn.
Rat on a Wednesday night on October 28th, 1981. Um, and there was maybe 25 people there. But I had just seen Rat a couple of weeks earlier opening for Motley Crue with the Troubadour. And Rat, I thought, blew away Motley Crue. They were heavy. They sounded
Right.
like it was
Metal with a purpose.
well, to a degree, but it was they were more influenced by Judas Priest
Yep.
than pop music. Like, I remember a few months later, not that long later, that song Mob Rules came out by Sabbath, and that opening
Yeah.
track, Turn Up the Night. I was like, this riff sounds like that Rat riff. You got it. That I saw, them playing a couple of months back, kind of thing. So Rat was heavier than You Think You're Tough or whatever, Round and Round or whatever their stuff was. I like all these bands. Dante Fox was a speed metal band. They turned into Great White, but they were straight ahead rock, straight ahead metal that was closer to Accept and Judas Priest than you know their blues era. So, um, but when all those bands became real popular, and then that kind of music was the the represented heavy metal, that's when I was all about thrash metal. Like I
Yep.
said, oh gee, man, I hate that music so much. I cannot wait to destroy it. And that was me being
And that
16,
you
17
did.
year old judgmental little kid, but I'm not going to turn around these days and say this new metal sucks because it's just a bunch of noise.
Well,
No, you're going to find good stuff. And
yeah. And,
yeah, some of it
it seems like
not be to my
today,
taste, but I won't discount it because maybe I'm not a big fan of the actual sound. It's all valid. You know, there are a lot of bands that are getting quite popular now that I'm like, I don't quite get, but I'm not going to disparage them. They're following their passion. They're following their love. They love the music that they love, and they're writing the music that they want to write. That's my story right there. So I'm not gonna tell anybody your band's terrible kind of thing.
and it's like the more people today, bands today are definitely like a lot more about the extreme. And I kind of see it from they are helping the extreme music, that you have been doing for so long and just kind of taking it to a new place. And that's okay because of evolution. which is something that we've seen you do throughout your entire career. And I have my favorites. I have my favorite black metal bands, death metal bands. Grind can, for me, like grindcore is
Sure.
kind of hit or miss for me. It just really depends on sound and overall, how it makes me feel when I hear it. But I mean, shit, I'll always take a good Dark Angel record or a Death album
Darn tootin'.
over a lot of what comes out today. And that's not me dating myself. Yes, I'm going to be 47 this year, but I don't give a shit.
Right.
That's one thing that my show has always tried to do is open up this generation's eyes to what was laid down, before what you're hearing today. Because it took its cues from the stuff that you've done, the work you've done with all these amazing bands.
Well,
So
thank you.
absolutely. And it's definitely time for the shameless plug. So what are some of the things that you got coming up?
Well, ironically, there's a number of things that
I believe it.
I can't talk about yet.
Right.
There is a massive project that I and a number of other musicians are involved in, and that project will be announcing itself in April of 2024.
Oh man.
The album is done. The album took about 3 years to complete.
Woo!
And it was done during the pandemic, and that was part of the challenges. However, it is an all-star cast on the album, and there are some massive musicians, some of the world's biggest musicians from the world's biggest bands, and all come together under a very, very metallic guise. And it's in just anybody paying attention to this right now, just check back in April, and this is what I'm talking about. It's going to be a pretty massive release, and I'm sure this is arguably the best album I've ever been a part of. And I love all the DethKlok. I love all the strapping and Devin and, all these other things, all the death and all that stuff. But this is beyond like what I've ever been involved in. And it's pretty psychotic. So I'm pretty excited about that. And, working on another album at the moment that hope that will have its release in 2024. And I know there's going to be a lot of road work involved. Dark Angel's going to be doing a lot more shows, and I'm sure there's going to be some Death to All coming up in the, we're all getting schedules together. And, I'm always open to I love DethKlok. I would love to see us being able to do something else in the future. Who knows? My mind and heart is open to it. Absolutely. And,
Hell yeah.
Perhaps Brendan's is as well. So that was, it's so fun. DethKlok is so dang fun. And that's since, we just got off the tour last week. It had a chance to let it settle in for a moment, because when you're on the road and you're putting on a show like that, it was only an hour set, which is pretty small for a DethKlok set. But,
sure.
Like I said, with all those responsibilities involved, you never get to, like, quote unquote, enjoy it, because it's like, right, here, one thing, make sure tonight's show runs flawlessly and is awesome. And you play great. And that's one thing I was fortunate with was each one of my shows just got better and better and better and better and better in terms of the playing and the chops and all that sort of stuff. I was at the top of my game at the end of the tour, which is the way you want to be. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, just, I guess, anybody who's interested, just keep paying attention to my socials and socials of all the projects I'm involved in, and everybody will be kept aware of the latest goings on. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can definitely follow Gene Hoglan on Facebook and on Instagram, the real Gene Hoglan. And
Oh, thank you.
he's not a hard man to find. And, your laundry list of just the best, amazing bands, amazing projects. We're so excited for what you got coming up in the near future as well. So I for one will definitely be reposting all the latest news for the different bands and stuff, that the projects you have going on. To always, and that's one thing I always do. I try to, anytime big news hits, I'm always posting it on my page. So
I sure do appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It has been just a monumental time hanging out with you and learning. I've learned so much more than I thought I knew, ahead of time.
Take that. Very cool.
I would definitely love to have you come back, especially after some of these, other big releases come up. When we look forward to every last one of them, keep doing what you're doing. And obviously for all your fans that showed up tonight and new fans that I bet you you've made as well, what do you want to leave them with?
Well, to anybody who's paid attention or is actually paying attention, I sure do appreciate your support, and it's been an amazing journey for the last 40 years for myself, and I welcome anybody who wants to be a part of that journey. Just keep hanging in there and always trying to strive for the best that I can be. And so, like my drumming career is right in the middle somewhere, so I'm going to constantly be trying to up my game of drumming. So I sure do appreciate anybody who's been around for as long as yourself there, Reaper, going back to the Dark Angel days. Sure do appreciate that. And there's many more exciting things to come. Absolutely. We're on fire all over the place. So thank you, everybody, for giving a listen and paying attention. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you again. Thank you to everybody out in the comment section. I know some of you have probably just been like listening to the stories and just amazed because cool. There's been a lot of comments, and I thank everybody out there in Black Flame Land for tuning in tonight and showing your support for this amazing musician, not just a drummer, but an absolute legendary performer, in my opinion. And he ain't going away, folks.
Right.
He is in demand and got so much more coming up. So indeed. Thank you all again. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for Sister Kill Cycle as part of this Double Shot Reaper week as we head into Halloween. So lots coming up. And Gene, thank you again so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to join the little Reapers Underground this evening. So as you are about to head into the hump of the week, and you have visions of Gene Hoglan destroying you in your sleep with his rhythms, you must always remember, stay heavy.